You want to know why my species chooses humans? Alien girl pressed him against the wall. The corridor was quiet. The kind of quiet that only existed on deep space stations where thousands lived but most slept. The lights above were dimmed to night cycle levels, casting long shadows across the metallic walls. Commander Elia's ward had walked these halls countless times, yet tonight something felt different, heavy, as if the station itself was holding its breath. He barely had time to react. A blur of movement crossed his vision, fast and controlled. One moment he was walking, the next his back hit the wall with a dull thud, not painful, precise. A strong hand pressed against his chest, just enough to keep him still, not crushing. Not gentle either. Elias looked up. She stood close, far too close for any normal diplomatic boundary. Her skin held a faint silver-blue tone, smooth and unmarked, catching the corridor light in a way that felt unreal. Her eyes were large and luminous, shifting slightly in color as if responding to unseen thoughts. Long dark hair fell freely down her back, a rare sight among her kind who usually kept everything controlled and bound. She was Vierxian, one of them. Elias' heart beat faster, but not from fear alone. Vierxians were known across the Alliance as calm, logical, and terrifyingly capable. They did not waste motion. They did not act without reason, which meant this moment had a reason. Her forearm rested near his shoulder, blocking escape without touching his throat. It was a calculated stance, taught in Vierxian combat schools, designed to dominate space without violence. "Commander Elia's ward," she said, her voice low and even. "Do not raise an alarm." "I wasn't planning to," Elias replied, keeping his hands visible. "Any reason you're breaking at least 5 diplomatic rules right now?" Her eyes focused sharply on his, studying every micro-expression. "You asked a question today," Elias frowned. "I ask a lot of questions." This one was not permitted. He remembered then, the council chamber, the debate that had stretched for hours, resource sharing, military positioning, threat probability charts, all very normal, all very controlled, until he had spoken. Why humans? Why had the Vierxians chosen humanity as their primary partner species? Out of hundreds of starfaring civilizations, why humans, young, flawed, emotionally unstable humans? The room had gone silent. The Vierxian delegates had said nothing. The subject was changed. The meeting ended early, and now one of them had him pinned to a wall. "I didn't realize curiosity was illegal," Elias said carefully. "For most species it is encouraged," she replied. "For humans it is dangerous." He raised an eyebrow. "You going to explain that, or are you just here to scare me?" For the first time, her expression shifted. Something unreadable passed through her eyes. "I am here," she said, "because if you continue asking that question publicly, you will force my people to answer it." "And that's bad?" Elias asked. "Yes." Her hand pressed slightly firmer against his chest, not threatening, just enough to make the point clear. "Because once the truth is spoken, it cannot be ignored." Elias swallowed. "Then why tell me?" "Because," she said quietly, "you already know part of the answer, and that makes you dangerous too." She stepped back just a fraction, enough to give him space to breathe, but not enough to escape. "My name is Sarai," she continued. "I am not here officially." "That makes 2 of us," Elias muttered. Sarai did not smile. "My species does not choose allies lightly. We observe for decades, sometimes centuries." "I know the files," Elias said. "You watched us from before first contact." "Yes, we watched your wars, your recoveries. Your failures, and you still picked us," Elias said. "That's the part I don't understand." Her eyes dimmed slightly, the glow shifting toward a deeper shade. "That is because you are measuring worth by survival alone." "Isn't that what matters?" Elias asked. "For most species," Sarai said, "survival is the highest value, to live longer, to expand, to remove weakness." She leaned closer again, her voice dropping even lower. "Humans did not do that," Elias frowned. "We fight to survive like everyone else." "No," Sarai said. "You fight knowing you may not." That caught his attention. She turned her head slightly, as if recalling distant memories. "We observed your early space expansion, poor technology, fragile ships, short lifespans, you lost colonies." "We did," Elias said. "A lot of them." "Yes," she replied, "and instead of abandoning them, you returned." Elias remembered the stories, generations-old missions, lost signals, rescue attempts that failed more often than they succeeded. "Other species," Sarai continued, "calculate loss and move on. Humans mourned." Then tried again. She stepped back fully now, allowing him to stand properly, but the tension did not leave. If anything, it grew heavier. My people once faced extinction, she said, long before you reached your moon. Elias stayed silent. We survived by removing everything unnecessary, she said. Emotion, attachment, sacrifice without return. That sounds efficient, Elias said. It was, she agreed. We became powerful, stable, predictable. Her gaze sharpened. But when the galaxy began to burn, predictability became weakness. Elias felt a chill run through him. The same enemy that's been pushing the outer systems? Sarai nodded once. They fear nothing that behaves logically. And humans don't, Elias asked. Her eyes met his fully now. Humans charge burning ships to save strangers. Humans hold positions long after retreat is ordered. Humans choose hope when probability says extinction. That's bravery, Elias said. That is insanity, Sarai replied, and it terrifies our enemies. A distant hum vibrated through the station. Elias barely noticed at first. Sarai did. Her head snapped slightly to the side, eyes unfocusing for a brief second as she accessed incoming data. The hum grew louder, deeper. Alarms began to stir, low-level alerts activating across the station. Elias' communicator lit up at his wrist. "Commander," a voice said urgently. "Unidentified fleet just dropped out of fold space. No response to hails." Sarai exhaled slowly. "They have arrived sooner than predicted," she said. Elias looked at her. "The ones you're afraid of?" "Yes." The station lights shifted to emergency red. Distant footsteps echoed as crews began moving to battle stations. Elias straightened. "Then we should get to command." Sarai did not move. She stepped close one last time, her voice barely louder than a whisper. "This is why my species chose humans," she said, "because when the end approaches, you do not ask if you will survive." Her eyes locked onto his. "You ask who you can save." The station shook as the first distant impacts hit defensive shields. Sarai stepped back, finally releasing him completely. "And now," she said, turning toward the command corridor, "we will see if you live up to that choice." Elias followed without hesitation. Behind them, the quiet corridor was gone forever. The station shook again, harder this time. A deep vibration rolled through the metal floor, strong enough to force people to brace themselves against walls. Red warning lights flashed across the corridors, bathing everything in harsh color. Elias ran beside Sarai, their footsteps echoing as emergency sirens finally screamed to life. Crew members rushed past them, faces tight with fear and focus. Some wore human uniforms, others belonged to species Elias barely knew. In moments like this, the differences did not matter. Everyone was running toward duty. "They bypassed outer warning nets," Sarai said as they moved. Her voice stayed calm, but Elias noticed the tightness in her posture. "They are testing reaction time." "Testing us?" Elias asked. "That doesn't sound good. It is worse than an attack," she replied. "It means they are curious." They reached the command center. The doors slid open, revealing controlled chaos. Officers shouted reports. Holographic displays showed the station, friendly fleets, and then the enemy, dark, angular shapes drifting just outside weapons range. No visible markings, no signals, just presence. Elias stepped forward. "Status," a tactical officer turned. "Enemy fleet holding position, no communication. Energy readings are strange. They're not charging weapons, they're watching." Sarai moved beside him, her eyes scanning the data faster than any human could. "They are waiting for a mistake." Elias folded his arms. "Then we don't give them one?" A human captain shook his head. "Sir, our allies are requesting withdrawal. Probability models show station loss at 70% if engagement begins." Elias looked at the display. The Vierxian fleet was present, powerful, but holding back. Other species, ships had already started pulling away, forming defensive clusters far from the station. "They're leaving civilians here," Elias said quietly. "Yes," Sarai answered. "That is the logical response." Elias turned to face the room. "Evacuation status?" "Only 40% complete," someone replied. "Too many non-combatants, not enough time." Elias did not hesitate. "Then we buy time." Several officers froze. Sarai slowly turned her head toward him. "You are choosing confrontation." "I'm choosing delay," Elias said. "There's a difference." He tapped the console. "Signal all human ships, independent action authorization." The room erupted in protest. "That's risky. They'll be outnumbered. This breaks protocol." Elias raised his voice. "We didn't come this far to hide behind probability charts. We move forward, we make noise, we make them react to us instead of the station." Sarai watched him closely. Her people valued restraint, calculation, control, and yet. Vierxian command, she said calmly, activating her channel. Observe human deployment patterns, do not intervene unless necessary. There was a pause, then a single reply came through. Observation confirmed. Human ships surged forward, smaller, less advanced, but fast. They spread out, unpredictable, changing vectors without pattern. Some moved too close, drawing enemy sensors. Others cut engines completely, drifting in silence. The enemy fleet shifted. They're responding, an officer said. They don't like uncertainty, Sarai murmured. The first shots came without warning. A human frigate took a direct hit, shields collapsing instantly. The ship did not retreat. It turned and fired everything it had, forcing the enemy vessel to adjust course. That ship is lost, someone whispered. Elias watched the feed. They know. The frigate detonated moments later, but its sacrifice bought seconds. Then minutes, then more. Evacuation numbers climbed. Sarai felt something unfamiliar tighten in her chest. She had seen battles, she had seen losses, but this was different. Humans were not trying to win, they were trying to protect. They are burning their future, she said softly. They're saving someone else's present, Elias replied. The enemy fleet pressed harder, more shots, more losses. Human pilots volunteered for impossible maneuvers. Engineers rerouted power manually. Medics worked without pause. One message came through from a damaged ship. We're hit bad, the pilot said, voice strained but steady. But we can hold them a bit longer. Elias closed his eyes briefly. You've done enough, fall back. No, sir, the pilot replied. We still have fuel. The signal cut. Sarai turned away from the display. She did not want to see the end. Evacuation reached 90%. Last transports launching, an officer reported. The station trembled again. Shields were failing. Structural damage spread across multiple sections. Elias straightened. All remaining human ships withdraw now? Some did, others could not. The enemy fleet hesitated. They had never faced this kind of resistance. No clear objective, no logical retreat. No self-preserving behavior. They are recalculating, Sarai said. They do not understand why this cost was acceptable. They never will, Elias said. Then slowly the enemy ships began to pull back. Gasps filled the command center. They're retreating. They're actually retreating, Sarai stared at the display in disbelief. They have determined this engagement is unfavorable. Because we're crazy? Elias asked weakly. Because you are uncontrollable, she replied, and therefore dangerous. Silence followed. Broken only by damaged systems and distant explosions fading into nothing. The station survived. Later, the corridors were quieter again, not peaceful but alive. Repair teams moved steadily. Survivors hugged. Some cried openly. Elias stood alone near an observation window, staring into the stars. His shoulders felt heavier than ever. Sarai approached quietly. You lost many, she said. We always do, Elias replied. We remember them, she nodded. My people will record today as a turning point. For the war, he asked. For us, she answered. He looked at her. Earlier you asked if we would live up to your choice. And you did, she said. You exceeded it. She stepped closer, not invading his space this time, standing beside him equal. My species believed emotion was weakness, she continued. But today I saw something else. What? Elias asked. Strength that cannot be removed without destroying what makes you human. She looked out at the stars. That is why we choose you. Not because you survived the universe, her eyes met his, but because you refuse to let the universe decide who you are. Elias exhaled slowly. Outside, the stars burned quietly, unaware that something had changed forever. Humanity had been chosen. And now it had answered. The war did not end that day, but something else did. In the weeks after the battle, the station changed. The broken walls were repaired. The lights returned to normal colors. New ships arrived to replace the ones that never came back. Names were added to memorial walls, written in many languages from many species. Elias Ward stood in front of those names more than once. He did not speak when he was there. He simply stood and remembered faces, voices, moments that would never happen again. Humans were good at that, remembering. Other species came to observe the station. Some arrived officially. Others came quietly, pretending to be curious travelers or research teams. They watched human crews work side by side with aliens. They saw humans laugh, argue, help, and mourn without shame. They had questions. Why did humans cry openly for those who were gone? Why did they continue working even when exhausted? Why did they talk about the future so soon after loss? The Vierxians watched too. Sarai stood in the observation chamber during one such visit, surrounded by her own people. Elder minds connected through silent thought, analyzing everything. Human behavior data filled the air with light and numbers. One elder finally spoke aloud. They are inefficient. Yes, Sarai answered, they sacrifice resources. Yes, they accept loss without gaining territory. Yes, the elder turned toward her. Then why do you continue to support them? Sarai looked down at the station below. At a human engineer teaching an alien child how to fix a broken light. At a medic sitting with a wounded Vierxian pilot long after treatment was complete, just to keep them company. Because, Sarai said, they do not measure value the way we do. The elder paused. Explain. Sarai took a slow breath. Humans believe existence itself has worth, not power, not survival alone, existence. Silence followed. That belief makes them weak, another elder said. Sarai's eyes hardened. No, it makes them unbreakable. News of the battle spread. Stories passed through trade routes and data streams. Some were exaggerated, some were simplified, but one truth remained. Humans had faced an enemy that even ancient species feared, and they did not run. On a distant human world, a small child listened to the story on a shared broadcast. She asked her father why the pilots did not leave. The father thought for a moment. Because someone needed them, he said. The child nodded, satisfied. That answer was enough. Back on the station, Elias returned to duty. He argued with admirals. He negotiated with diplomats. He filled out reports that could never fully explain what happened. One day, Sarai joined him in the command chamber. You are being reassigned, she said. Elias sighed. I was afraid of that. Not as punishment, she clarified, as recognition. He looked at her. That usually sounds worse. She tilted her head slightly, a Vierxian sign of thought. You will serve as human liaison to the Multi-Species Defense Council. Elias blinked. That's a lot of responsibility. Yes, she agreed. That is why it must be a human. He leaned back in his chair. You really trust us that much? Sarai met his gaze. We trust you because you do not trust yourselves, he frowned. That doesn't sound good. It is, she said. You question your power, you doubt your decisions, you fear becoming what you hate. She stepped closer. That fear keeps you honest. Elias was quiet for a long moment. Some of us won't like being watched, he said. You already are, Sarai replied calmly. That earned a weak smile. The enemy did not return quickly. When they did, they acted differently, more careful, less direct. They avoided human-led fleets when possible. Analysis showed confusion in their strategy. They had no model for a species that accepted loss without collapse. They could not understand why humans kept fighting even when victory was uncertain. To them, it looked like madness. To humans, it looked like choice. On a damaged moon at the edge of known space, a human rescue team landed under fire to evacuate an alien settlement that was not part of any alliance. You don't owe us, the alien leader said in disbelief. A human soldier shrugged. Doesn't matter, but you might die. The soldier smiled faintly. Yeah, that happens. The rescue succeeded. The message spread. Something changed in the galaxy. Species that once stayed neutral began to lean toward humanity, not because humans promised safety, but because humans promised effort. They would try. Even if they failed, even if it hurt, that mattered. One quiet cycle, Elias and Sarai stood together again by the observation window. Stars drifted slowly beyond the glass. Do you regret choosing us? Elias asked. Sarai considered the question carefully. My people do not regret. That's not an answer, he said. She looked at him. Then no, I do not, he nodded. Good, because we're not going to stop being us. I know, she said. There was a pause. Sarai, Elias said softly, what happens when we lose? When we finally face something we can't push back. Sarai did not answer right away. When that day comes, she said, you will do what you always do. What's that? You will stand, you will choose, and you will make the universe remember you existed. Elias exhaled slowly. That might not be enough, he said. Sarai turned fully toward him. It already is. Far away, beyond charts and borders, the enemy observed human activity again. New data, new models, new failures, one conclusion repeated. Humans could not be predicted. Humans could not be broken easily. Humans were not the strongest species, but they were the most stubborn. And in a universe that tried again and again to erase meaning, that stubbornness was dangerous. The war would continue. Loss would continue, but so would humanity. Not because they were chosen, but because again and again they chose others. And the universe, whether it wanted to or not, would have to deal with that. Time moved forward even when the war refused to end. Months passed, then years. The galaxy learned to live with conflict the way it learned to live with gravity, always present, always shaping every choice. Trade routes shifted, borders changed. Some worlds burned, others survived by narrow margins. Humanity did not become the strongest force. It became something harder to fight. On the rebuilt station, now larger and reinforced, new ships docked every cycle. Some came for protection. Others came for cooperation. A few came only to watch. They all noticed the same thing. Humans did not rule the station, they served it. Elias Ward walked through the main concourse, older now, lines visible around his eyes. His uniform carried new markings, but he wore them lightly. Power had never sat comfortably on him, and that made others trust him more. He stopped near a window where a group of young recruits, human and alien, were listening to a human instructor explain emergency procedures. The instructor's voice was calm, patient. "No one gets left behind," the instructor said. "Not because it's smart, because it's right." One of the alien recruits raised a hand. "What if staying means death?" The instructor nodded. "Then you decide if someone else's life is worth the risk." The alien was silent. Elias moved on. In the council chambers, Sarai stood before a gathering of species leaders. The room was larger now, expanded to fit new voices. Once the Vierxians spoke and others listened. Now discussion moved in many directions. A representative from a logical machine species spoke next. "Human-led operations show higher casualty rates," it said, "but also higher civilian survival." "Yes," Sarai replied, "that pattern remains consistent." "This is inefficient," the machine stated. "So is mercy," Sarai answered. "Yet you still requested human escorts for your convoys." The machine paused. "Correct." The meeting ended without argument. That alone was a victory. Elsewhere, far from the station, a human colony world prepared for evacuation. Enemy forces had been detected. Defense probability was low. The governor called Elias directly. "We can't hold them," she said. "We need more time." Elias closed his eyes briefly. "How long?" 6 hours, he looked at the star map. "We'll give you 8, he said. Human fleets moved before orders fully spread. Volunteers filled the rosters. Some ships were barely repaired from previous fights. Sarai watched the deployments from Vierxian command space. "They are going again," an elder observed. "Yes," Sarai said, "for a world with little strategic value." Sarai turned slowly. "Value to whom?" The battle was brutal. Human ships took heavy damage. Several never returned. But the evacuation succeeded. The colony survived. That mattered. Afterward, in the quiet between alarms, Elias sat alone in his quarters. He stared at a small object on his desk, a simple metal tag, scratched and worn, a pilot's identifier. He turned it over in his hand. Loss never became easier. Sarai knocked once before entering. "You should rest," she said. "I will," Elias replied. "Eventually," she studied him. "You are tired." "Everyone is," he said. "That is not what I meant," he smiled faintly. "I know." She sat across from him, not speaking for a while. Vierxians valued silence when words were not needed. "You were right," she said at last. "About what?" Elias asked. "About choice," she replied. "Your people continue to choose others, even now." He looked at the tag in his hand. "Sometimes I wonder how long we can keep doing that." "As long as you remember why," Sarai said. He met her gaze. "And if we forget," she answered without hesitation, "then we will remind you." Far beyond human space, the enemy adapted again. Their fleets avoided human systems unless absolutely necessary. When forced to engage, they struck quickly and withdrew. They did not understand fear, but they understood cost, and humans were costly to fight, not because of weapons, because of what they refused to surrender. A captured enemy commander was brought to the station after a rare skirmish. It was silent, its form strange and rigid. Elias and Sarai observed from behind a barrier. "Why do you resist?" the creature asked through translation. "You cannot win forever." Elias stepped forward. "We don't need forever." The creature tilted its head. "Then why continue?" Elias thought of burning ships, of evacuation lines, of names carved into walls. "Because today still matters," he said. The creature processed this for a long time. "There is no logic in that," it said. Sarai spoke next. "That is why you will never defeat them." The prisoner was taken away. Years later, historians would struggle to explain the turning point of the war. There was no single battle, no final victory, only a slow change. Worlds began to resist together. Species once divided coordinated defense. They shared resources not because treaties demanded it, but because humans had shown them it was possible. Human influence spread quietly, not through control, through example. On a small outpost, a human doctor treated an alien child with a rare illness, staying awake for days to keep the child stable. When asked why, the doctor simply said, "Someone would do it for mine." That story traveled farther than any broadcast. One evening, long after alarms had quieted, Elias and Sarai stood again by the stars. "You changed us," Elias said. Sarai shook her head. "No, you reminded us of something we abandoned." "What's that?" "That survival without meaning is only delay." Elias nodded slowly. The war would not end cleanly, but the future no longer looked empty. Somewhere, a new generation was growing up hearing stories not of fear, but of choice. And the universe, vast and uncaring, now carried something it had not expected. A species that refused to give up on others, a species that made hope inconvenient to erase. Humanity was still small, still fragile, still learning, but it stood, and that more than any weapon changed everything.